They say truth reveals itself in silence, and that night, in the soft glitter of chandeliers, I saw the silence break her mask. She slipped off her wedding ring, laughed like she'd never been mine, and handed it to another man. She didn't know I was standing right behind her. Before we start, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because what happened next will remind you that karma doesn't miss. I've always believed that love isn't built in a moment of passion. It's built in the quiet moments no one sees. The mornings you wake up early just to make coffee for her. The nights you sit beside her while she talks about her dreams. The days you hold her hand through storms you never saw coming. For years, I thought that was what we had, Alara and I. A love that wasn't loud, but lasting. She wasn't just my wife. She was the other half of everything I built. The face of our foundation, the light of every room, the one who made people believe in us. I was the structure. She was the art that gave it meaning. When we started the Veil Foundation for the Arts, poured ourselves into it, she managed the creative side, and I handled the business end. Together, we became that picture-perfect couple everyone admired, the kind you see smiling in magazines, holding glasses of champagne and pretending life was flawless. The charity ball was supposed to be a celebration of that very image, our triumph, our unity, our love on full display. I remember standing at the top of those marble stairs watching her descend in that silver gown that shimmered like moonlight. For a moment, I forgot every doubt that had ever crossed my mind. Her smile hit me like sunlight. And when she took my arm in front of everyone, I thought, this is what forever looks like. But forever, as I would soon learn, can end in a heartbeat. That night, something about her felt different. The way she laughed, just a little too bright. The way she looked around the room like she was searching for someone else. I told myself it was stress, maybe exhaustion. I had no reason to doubt her. Not Alara. Not the woman who once looked me in the eyes and promised. No matter how loud the world gets, I'll always hear you. But sometimes promises fade before words do. And as the music played and the champagne flowed, I saw a flicker. In her expression, a small, private smile that wasn't meant for me, a smile that would unravel everything I thought I knew. That was the night she took off her ring, and the night I finally saw her for who she really was. The ballroom that night looked like something pulled out of a dream, golden light spilling. From crystal chandeliers, laughter floating through the air like a soft melody, the scent of roses and expensive perfume weaving together. Everywhere I turned, people were smiling, clinking glasses, congratulating us for the success of the foundation. I smiled back, played the part I was expected to play, the devoted husband, the proud partner, the man who had it all. Alara was the center of it all. She always was. People gravitated to her as if she carried her own orbit. The way she spoke, the way her hand rested lightly on someone's arm when she laughed, it made people feel seen. I used to love that about her. But that night, something about it felt different. Her laughter was louder, almost forced. Her eyes were brighter, but not for me. I caught her glancing across the room a few too many times. Each time, a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face, a spark I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I tried to ignore it, told myself I was imagining things. The music was loud, the crowd thick, and she looked stunning. Maybe she was just overwhelmed. I wanted to believe that. God, I needed to believe that. But when she excused herself to get some air, something in my chest tightened. I watched her from a distance as she walked toward the balcony, graceful, composed, every inch the woman I'd fallen in love with. Yet her steps carried a kind of purpose that didn't feel innocent. I hesitated, then followed, careful enough not to be noticed. The air outside was cooler, quieter. The laughter inside faded into a distant hum. There she was, standing under the soft glow of the garden lights, facing a man I hadn't noticed before. He was tall, confident, with that polished charm that hides too much. They stood close, closer than strangers should. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The look in her eyes said enough. She laughed again, that same bright laugh that used to belong to me. In that moment, surrounded by glitter and gold, I realized something chilling. The woman I loved wasn't mine anymore, and she hadn't been for a long time. I remember every second of that moment, how the world seemed to slow, how the music from inside doled into a faint echo. I stood there, half hidden behind a marble pillar, watching the woman I had trusted with my life. Ilara's hand rested lightly on the man's chest as she spoke to him, her tone soft, familiar, intimate. I couldn't hear their words, but I could feel them. Every smile, every glance, every brush of her fingers felt like a blade quietly carving into my chest. The man, Kellen Dre. I knew of him. A businessman who'd recently made a generous donation to her foundation. She'd mentioned him once or twice, always casually, as if he were nothing more than a name on a check. But the way she looked at him now, that wasn't business. That was history in motion, the kind of look people only share when they've already crossed a line. I wanted to walk away. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Pretend that the image of her leaning in close was just a misunderstanding. But denial is a weak shield against truth. Then it happened. Ilara slipped her hand down, slowly turning the gold band on her finger. The ring I had placed there on our wedding day. She smiled, whispered something to him, and then she took it off. Just like that, the symbol of everything we built, everything we promised, gone, as if it never meant a thing. She placed it in his palm, her fingers lingering there longer than they should have. And then I heard it faint but unmistakable. Now it's official. My breath caught. The world around me blurred. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just stood there, frozen behind the glittering veil of that perfect evening, realizing that I was no longer a husband. I was a ghost at my own funeral, watching the burial of something sacred. When she turned to go back inside, laughing as if nothing had happened, I stayed there alone. My heart felt heavier than the silence that surrounded me. That was the moment I stopped being the man who loved her, and became the man who would destroy everything she built. I drove home that night without saying a word. The rain had started, light at first, then relentless, a perfect soundtrack for the storm unraveling inside me. The wipers dragged across the glass, and each movement seemed to echo her voice, her laughter, the way she said, "Now it's official." The phrase kept replaying in my mind, over and over, like a curse I couldn't silence. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same, the warm glow from the living room, the soft music she always left playing, the framed photos lining the hallway. But I wasn't the same man who'd left a few hours earlier. I walked past the pictures, our wedding, our first home. Her smile pressed against my shoulder, and I felt nothing. Just emptiness. It's strange how quickly love can rot when truth touches it. I didn't confront her that night. When she came home later, pretending nothing had happened, I simply watched. She kissed my cheek, her perfume filling the space between us like poison wrapped in silk. I smiled back, because anger was too small for what I felt. No, I didn't want to fight. I wanted understanding, not from her, but from the universe itself. How does someone go from forever to forget so easily? The next morning, she laughed at breakfast, told me about the donations they'd received at the event. I listened. Every lie slid off her tongue like honey. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger, not grief, but clarity. I didn't need to scream or accuse her. I didn't need to beg for truth. I already had it. What I needed now was justice. So I began to watch more closely. Every call she made, every unexplained message, every late meeting she attended, and slowly the puzzle started forming. I learned that Kellen wasn't just a fling. He was her partner in something darker. Money had been moving from our accounts into theirs. The foundation she'd built on my trust was now built on deceit. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ring mark still faint on her finger. And I made a promise not to her, not to us, but to myself. She took off her ring. I would take off my mercy. Revenge doesn't arrive with fire and fury. It comes quietly born out of sleepless nights, steady breaths, and the kind of silence that sharpens the soul. In the days that followed, I carried on as if nothing had changed. I still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, still listened when she spoke about her meetings, her projects, her donors. But behind every nod, every word, I was collecting truth like a weapon. I started with her phone. Not by breaking in, but by observing patterns numbers she saved under false names. Messages she deleted a little too quickly. Then came the foundation's records, the ones only I and the finance manager had access to. It didn't take long to find it. Transfers, subtle but deliberate. Small amounts routed to shell accounts under Kellendre's name. Each one signed off by Alara herself. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it was criminal. I felt no pity, no hesitation. Just purpose. I copied every document, every transaction, every email that tied them together. But I didn't stop there. I had friends in places they didn't know existed. It's people who owed me favors from the world I once lived in before this polished life. With their help, I traced every move she and Kellen made. And the more I uncovered, the more my anger transformed into precision. One night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I whispered a silent promise to the darkness. You will never see this coming. My plan wasn't impulsive, it was surgical. I would let her walk freely, let her believe she'd outsmarted me, let her think I was still blind. Because betrayal, when met with calm, terrifies more than rage ever could. I waited 2 weeks long enough for her to grow comfortable again, long enough for the truth to harden into evidence. Then I made my move. I met with the board members of the foundation privately, showed them everything. Their faces said what words couldn't shock: disgust, disbelief that the woman they admired could be capable of such deceit. By the end of that night, her empire was already cracking. She didn't know it yet, but her world was about to collapse exactly the way she made mine crumble. She took my trust. I was about to take her legacy. It happened exactly 1 week later. The night she thought she had one, another grand gala, another chance for Alara to parade herself under the illusion of grace and success. She wore a golden gown this time, elegant, dazzling, the kind meant to hide every sin beneath its shimmer. People adored her as always, showering her with compliments, smiles, and flattery. And I smiled too, because tonight wasn't her victory. It was her verdict. I'd sponsored the entire event. Every candle, every light, every camera was under my control. The same people she'd manipulated were here again: donors, porters, board members, all of them unaware that they were about to witness the truth she thought she'd buried. I let her take the stage first. Her voice was calm, confident, dripping with charm as she thanked everyone for their generosity. I stood near the back, a glass of wine untouched in my hand, my heart steady as a blade. When she finished her speech and the applause began, I walked toward the microphone. The room quieted. She looked at me, surprised, but smiling politely. That smile faded the moment the screen behind her flickered to life. The first image appeared her messages with Kellen, then the bank transfers. Then the final blow, a short video from the charity ball balcony. Her face, her words, now it's official. Tss. The crowd went silent. A sharp gasp cut through the air. Alara froze, her eyes wide, her breath shaking. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply looked at her and said, "You took off your ring for him. But tonight, I'm taking back everything it stood for." Her lips trembled as whispers filled the room. Cameras flashed. Kellen's name rippled through the crowd like a curse. I turned and walked away before she could speak. She called my name, but I didn't stop. Not this time. The sound of her heels against the marble floor followed me until I reached the door. Behind me, I heard the faint clatter of metal. Her ring had fallen, rolling across the stage until it stopped by the microphone. The symbol of everything we once were. And now, it belonged to no one. They say when truth explodes, it doesn't just burn the guilty, it scorches everything around them. In the days after that night, Alara's perfect world began to unravel, piece by piece, exactly the way she had unraveled mine. The headlines were merciless. Every magazine, every news channel carried her name, not as a symbol of elegance, but of deceit. Charity Queen accused of fraud. Veil Foundation scandal. The same cameras that once worshipped her now fed on her downfall. Kellen vanished first. He disappeared overseas, leaving her to face the ruin alone. But karma is patient and thorough. Within a week, he was caught, extradited, and charged with financial fraud. The foundation's accounts were frozen, the board dissolved. And all of Alara's so-called friends began to distance themselves. No one stood by her, not one. The woman who once had the world at her feet was now left standing on ashes she created. I watched it all unfold quietly. There was no satisfaction in it, not the kind people imagine. Revenge doesn't heal you. It simply reminds you that pain changes people. Some break. Some rise. I had chosen to rise. She tried to call me several times. Left messages filled with apologies, confusion, tears. I listened once. Just once. Her voice cracked when she said my name, the same way it used to when she told me she loved me. But this time, it sounded hollow, like someone calling into a void that no longer answered. One evening, I saw her from a distance outside the art gallery we once opened together. She stood there alone, staring at the locked doors, her reflection staring back at her through the glass. The woman who once commanded every room now looked like a shadow of her own lies. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. Karma already had. As I turned to leave, the faintest sound followed, her quiet sob breaking in the wind. And for a fleeting second, I almost felt sorry for her almost. Because betrayal always returns home, it just wears a different face when it does. Time moved on, but the echo of that night never truly left me. I thought exposing her would bring peace, that watching her empire collapse would somehow fill the silence she left behind. But the truth is, revenge only quiets the noise. It doesn't erase the echo. For weeks, I drifted through life like a man between worlds, not angry anymore, just empty. The kind of emptiness that doesn't ache, it hums quietly inside your bones. One morning, I found the ring she had left behind, the same one that rolled across the ballroom floor and came to rest at my feet. I had kept it in my pocket without realizing it. When I opened my palm, the gold looked dull now, stripped of meaning, heavy with memory. That was when I finally understood the ring was never cursed. It was simply worn by the wrong hands. So I decided to do something different, something she could never imagine. I sold what was left of our foundation, cleared every trace of her name, and donated the recovered funds to a shelter for partners who had been betrayed people trying to rebuild from ruins like mine. Every brick, every painting, every cent became part of something honest. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was release. I stopped speaking her name after that. Not out of hatred, but because she no longer lived in the part of my story that mattered. She became a lesson, not a wound. And in a strange way, I thanked her. Because without her betrayal, I would have never learned the true value of peace or the quiet strength of walking away. Last I heard, Alara moved to another city, living alone, her once bright name fading into whispers. Maybe she's found a way to sleep at night. Maybe not. But karma isn't always a thunderclap. Sometimes it's just the silence after the storm, the kind that forces you to listen to your own guilt. And as for me, I finally stopped waiting for closure. I didn't need it anymore. Because in the end, I realized something simple. She took off her ring that night, but I was the one who truly let go.